Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Transition in Medical Education Series webinar, hosted by the AACOM's Council on Residency Placement and the Assembly of Osteopathic Graduate Medical Educators, residents, and fellow council. My name is Abigail Frank, and I'm the Assistant Dean of GME at the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine. I will be the facilitator for this session. Before we get started, I would like to review a few housekeeping notes. The opening panel will be recorded and available to view on the AOGME webpage within 7 days. The breakout session will not be recorded. Please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A feature at any time. Please remain muted at all times during the opening panel. You will be able to unmute in the breakout rooms and ask questions to the panelists in those sessions. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat to notify us and we will assist you. I would now like to thank the panelists who joined us today to speak with you for the opening panel as they share their expertise, perspective, and advice for success in clinical rotations. We have with us this evening Dr. Basree, Dr. Furey, Dr. Logan, and Kimberly Warfield. So I will let our guests introduce themselves. We'll start with Dr. Basree. If you will share with us what year in training you are and your specialty and your institution.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Mustafa. I'm a PGY4 at the University of Wisconsin, and I am specializing in radiation oncology. And I went to University of Pikeville, Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Dr. Furey?
Hi, everybody. My name's Mike. I'm currently actually a research resident at Geisinger, but I'll be coming back as a 4 in July in general surgery. I did medical school at LECOM in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Dr. Logan?
Hello, I'm Linda. I am a PGY5 breast and GYN pathologist at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and I trained at WVSOM.
And the lovely Miss Warfield.
Well, thank you for that. Hi, I am Kimberly Warfield. I am the residency counselor at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine currently. My background, before the last couple of years, I was a residency manager. I've had about 20 residencies over the last 25 years. So anything from primary care to derm to palliative care fellowships, I've done a little bit of everything. Glad to be here.
Thank you, panelists. We'll start. If you all want to go around and give 1 or 2 tips for success in clinical rotations and away rotations.
Do you want me to start? I'm happy to. So I would like to share maybe a couple things. I tend to speak a lot, or talk a lot, so feel free to mute me. But 2 things. Have a positive attitude overall and be prepared. Really 2 simple things. And, as we're going through this webinar or preparing for the webinar, I looked at my application before and saw what comments my faculty have made. And the general themes really is just, have a positive attitude, show initiative and be interested in whatever rotation you're on. There will 100% be a good portion of rotations that you just want to do because that's what your medical school and what medical education want you to do to be a good doctor, and you don't care for it, and that's fine. But be interested and give it the 100% attention that your patients deserve. And the other theme that emerged is preparation. No one anticipates you to be a specialist in the field. You're a student. No one expects me to be a specialist in my field, and I'm a resident. So we're all there to learn. We're just different learners at different, along different path on the spectrum. But you have a patient, just read about that patient, prepare for that patient. Like on surgery, for example, I don't know how to do an appendectomy A to Z, but at least I can study a little bit of anatomy. I know, where the appendix is, vascular supply, nerve supply, things like that. And, you're on internal medicine or something like that, read about your hypertension patient, your heart failure patient. You don't have to know the answers, have some ideas. Some of them will be outrageous. That's fine. People appreciate you're trying and you're thinking about things. I'm going to stop there.
I can go next. Hey, so number one, so I come from a different perspective, right? Because I've not been a resident, but I've managed residents. So, and I've had a lot of rotators and auditioners, things like that. So always look for opportunities to be of assistance. Like, don't just sit there and wait for someone to come to you. If you see the medical assistant struggling and you don't have a patient to go see, what can I do to help you, right? Front desk staff, you hear somebody's shorthanded and you don't have something to do. Well, there's not anything that's going to be below you to do in a medical office. Okay. Go sit down and help them check in patients. Ask if you can sit with someone. Everybody should have input into your evaluations at the end of the rotation. This is how you will stand out, right? If you see a resident's overwhelmed, maybe somebody's called in sick, they've gotten behind on patients, what can I do to help you catch up? Like, always be available to help. And like Dr. Basree said, some of the rotations are not going to be in your will box. They're not going to be a lot of interest to you, but be positive and be interested. People notice when you're not, okay? And learn people's names. Learn the front desk staff. Learn the custodian that you see every day. Say hello. People will remember those things. The small things are big things. They really, really matter. And you're going to be told like, okay, be here at 8 o'clock, be there at 7:45 and be ready to go at 8 o'clock. Right. And don't be the first person out the door. I promise you, they notice. Don't be that first person. Right. And ask your preceptor, is there anything else I can do to help you get out the door? Just be prepared that it's not always an 8 to 5 day. Sometimes it's a 7 to 6 or 7 to 7, and just kind of be prepared for those things. So that's what I got.
I'm going to piggyback off of both of those things about being prepared and being early, because I think from a surgery perspective, we're definitely there early and we're definitely there late a lot. And if it's not something you're interested in, that's totally cool. But we will notice very quickly. And people do put that in the evaluations. So I think, early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. So definitely, I'm not saying you got to beat the intern in, but, definitely be in earlier. And kind of with going with being prepared, I wouldn't leave at the end of the day without knowing what the plan is for the next day. So, what patients are you going to see? If it's, if you're going to the OR, what OR cases are you going to be a part of? So that way you have a game plan when you go home of what you're going to read, what you're going to look up, and kind of have already the next day kind of already in process. So I think, yeah, those definitely stand out in my mind for sure.
Everything I said was taken. So I will say, I liked how Mustafa said a theme. It sounds like it's important to be professional. So you are learning staff members' names. You're not acting better than others if they're, in a different position than yourself, and you're on time, which is also part of professionalism. So I know that's an overused word often, but I would just say like treat it as a job, and dress like it's the job. All the things for professional behavior. I think that's what I'll say, because that's kind of a little bit different than what everyone said.
So my tip is about finding the right away rotations for you. So oftentimes, I have a career advisor role, and my students will look on VSLO, and that's where they'll start looking. And I highly encourage you to use another platform, Residency Explorer or Frida. Pick your specialty, pick your ideal location, and then check and see the interview rates. For students like you, different programs have different preferences. Some programs really like to take international medical graduates. So check and see, look at the current residents and see how many DOs they have in a class. DOs make up 20% of graduating seniors. So if there's an incoming class of 10 residents, then in theory, if programs are accepting DOs based on numbers, then they should have 20 DOs in the class, or 2 in an incoming class of 10. And then my next words of wisdom, I'm going to ramble, so I'm sorry, is find the coordinator, the program coordinator, or the person who's in charge of student rotations. Email them and ask them what platform they use. Do they use vSLO? Do they use Clinician Nexus? Do they use ACE Maps? And then ask them when they release their away rotations, and make sure that you're ready, right? Because you want to make sure that when you're applying for those audition rotations for your 4th year, that your application is in right away. I feel like I've talked enough. So I'm going to give our panelists. So this question is to all of you. What should one look for when selecting their audition rotation?
For me, for surgery, I kind of just started a spreadsheet, kind of going off of what you were saying, Dr. Frank, about almost like finding a good fit. And I mean, there are definitely places that in surgery, maybe specifically, don't pick DOs sometimes in programs. So I was careful at picking my away rotations at places where DOs were kind of already established a presence. Not that I didn't want to, quote, waste an away rotation, but I wanted to make sure that I picked a place that I definitely think had a good shot, just to put it kind of frankly.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that. One way is see if you have a shot in that place. If you apply to, at least in the oncology world, all of the top 3-5 programs, you not get your slot, be disappointed. But if you kind of be strategic in where you apply, then you'll land a place somewhere. The other thing is geography. If you and where you see yourself going or training. Radiation oncology is a fairly small field. I think surgery, pathology, and other specialties are larger, and so there's maybe a little bit more flexibility with geography. So if you have the opportunity, certainly focus on that. I actually was just having this conversation with one of my mentees, and she has several options that she would like to apply to, and she really wants to be in one program for training, and so do that rotation, apply for that rotation, and do it second, so that you have at least one audition rotation that get your bearings and kind of getting in that mode of auditioning, so that your second audition rotation is when you're really sharpening your skills and kind of, for lack of a better term, know how to play the game. There are other things that we can certainly chat a little bit more about, but I'll give Linda and others.
He said what I wanted to say, but it's okay because we're friends and we have the same brainwave. But geography was great.
You go first next time.
No, it's okay. And we're in a similar field, kind of like we work hand in hand a lot, so it's funny. But geography is huge, especially if you went away from medical school and you want to go back towards family, or say you have a kid or something. And I would also say the one thing that has been mentioned is maybe like looking at the size of the program. And like the type of hospital it is, whether it's academic or more community-based or what have you, like whatever you're looking for, because that's the program you're going to want to apply to for residency, and that's where you'd want to audition. So it might not be in the geographical location you would want, but it might be like everything that you want for training. For instance, for fellowship, I'm not from Pennsylvania, but it was an incredible program, and I would never regret not coming. Like, it was incredible to come here. But so sometimes you don't always go where you want to go geography wise, but just take a look at like the number of beds in the hospital, how large the hospital is, the accessibility to like the community practices or the clinics, or like research or whatever you're looking for. I think that's also incredibly important.
All right. So I would consider a mix of programs. Like Include the top choices that you want to go to, right? But then backup options, right? Because we're gonna counsel you that way. But consider both backup options, like where do I really want to go, and then some other places. The other thing I want you to consider is be prepared. Like discuss why do you want to come to that program. It may even be a question you have to answer in Vislo or Clinician Nexus, right? Why are you interested in the program and how can you contribute? Like think about that stuff ahead of time and have it ready. Then when you get to those application questions, you're not like, oh, like you're worried, because the sooner you get the applications in through Vislo or Clinician Nexus, the more chances of getting that rotation, because there's going to be several people applying for those spots. And when I was doing rotations, everybody said it's not fair. It's first come, first serve. That's the best way for us to do it. It's not always fair, but be ready and be prepared.
I think of audition rotations and residency kind of like real estate. So you can have a great program, and no disrespect to anybody who lives in North Dakota, but it is not the most prestigious location. You could take that same program and put it in Hawaii, and all of a sudden it becomes a really competitive residency program. So you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at programs, that just the location alone can make a program more or less competitive. And as the lovely Miss Warfield was saying, apply to a range of programs. So for our panelists, what is the best way to stand out during a rotation? How about we let the lovely Dr. Logan go first?
Geez, this one's kind of hard because for pathology, they don't expect you to know anything yet, really. So I would say when I did 3 sub-Is, and when I did them, I just basically tried to like retain what was being told to me from each day. So then by the end of the week, I could kind of share my feelings with my preceptor and try to explain and show to them that I've learned something and that I'm like interested in the subject. And so for pathology and more of like the I don't know, research sciencey side of medicine. It's more about being interested and not falling asleep at the scope and being bored. They want you to be like, oh, that's cool. What cell is that? That's such a cool cell. But a lot of people don't think that's cool. And I was one of them who did. So I just tried to retain the new things I learned that month. And then when we debriefed, they liked that. They liked that I, tried, for lack of a better word.
No, I think we talked about it earlier, but I think just being there, being present, being involved, and being the person that, like, especially on an audition rotation, that people want to work with. Because just as, it's kind of a two-way street. You're evaluating the program and they're evaluating you. And, I think for me, when we have sub-Is, like, I think the number one thing that I think about is, can I work with this person in the future? And then everything else obviously is important too, but if the vibes aren't good and everybody's not getting along, then that's just not going to work out from the bat. So I think that for me would just be the person that people want to work with.
Just look at the schedule, regardless of what kind of audition rotation you're doing, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, surgical, or medical. Look at the schedule and pick 1 or 2 patients and take ownership. Even if it's not expected that you participate in anything, ask, is it, I'm applying for this. Is it okay if I, look at Mr. So-and-so and present the patient at rounds, or discuss with attending or whatever it is, and then have some ideas of what you want to do for them. If it was an inpatient service, that longitudinal kind of thinking and evolution of the plan is really helpful. It shows that, one, you're thinking about this patient, you're spending time to care for them. And if it was outpatient, it's you're cycling through many patients also, which is helpful for demonstrating that you follow up, demonstrating that you're reading about the patient, and then be prepared. And again, it doesn't have to be you have to know everything, but just look at the schedule before, know what's going on during the day. And one thing that really started, when I was a medical student and I see other people rotating, or now in radiation oncology and people in our clinic rotate. We just want you to be a nice person. Like what Michael said, am I gonna like you? Residency, it's a long time, even if you're doing family or internal med, 3 years is still a long time. And if you're not a kind, nice person to get along with, it's a deal breaker.
All right. So I have a couple of things. So ask for feedback, right? Not the first day, right? But ask for feedback and then be ready to make some changes so they can see those areas of improvement to demonstrate your commitment to growth. That's huge. Life is nothing but feedback and growth, right? Some of it, the feedback's hard. But some of it, so here's feedback one of my students got was stopping at, and this is kind of a tongue in cheek, but stopping at Starbucks for coffee for everybody doesn't mean it's okay to be late, right? It's nice that you bring coffee. And it was a little harsh. That was a feedback one of my students got. But be ready for constructive feedback. Be ready, like maybe you're super introverted. I am more introverted than extroverted. Maybe, hey, you need to step out of your box and engage with the patients a little bit more. That's not an insult. That's helping you be a better person, right? Be ready for feedback and ask for it. Don't be afraid. I mean, that's all. This is a growth journey, and it's a growth journey through medical school, but rotations are a different kind of growth journey. So be ready to ask for that feedback and implement it so they can see that you are implementing it. That was hard to say. So like maybe you're the person who's doing all this, the EMR, like you're the person sitting there while your partner is examining the patient. And then maybe somebody comes in and says, hey, I really couldn't understand this note. Could you do it differently this way? And maybe that doesn't make sense to you, but doing it their way the next day, they're going to see that you're ready to listen and grow. These are simple examples, but it's things that I've seen happen. So thank you.
What are the most common mistakes medical students make on clinical rotations, and how can they avoid them? Dr. Furey.
I think the one thing, whether you're on an audition or not, is asking if it's time to go. People will remember that. So I think, you'll know when it's time to leave. When the work's done, sign out's done. And I think being present for, obviously patient sign out in the morning and at the end of the day is super important. And you as the student, as you kind of progress through, you may be signing out your patients that you've helped care for the day. So if you leave early and you're not part of that, you're not getting the total experience, and it's important, super important.
I'll go next. It's probably different than what you're going to say. I would say to be teachable. That sounds really cliche, but I've noticed the medical students who rotate in pathology that really want to do pathology sometimes will try to teach us something, and it's something we might already know because we're like 5th years or whatever, and they're trying to like gloat about themselves, but it's great to know a lot and to be prepared, as everyone has elaborated, but just be careful not being like too much and trying to really like make yourself too well known, because we want you to be engaged and to be teachable, but not unteachable to where you already think you know everything and there's a lot you still need to learn, and we see that, but you might not see that because you haven't gone through the experience of residency yet. So it'll be something learned, but just be humble, I guess. Stay humble, and everyone will like you.
Yeah, very similar vibes, I think, Linda. The human aspect of just the human interaction, I think, is really important. And, we don't spend a lot of time on it in medical school, and some of those things are just, it's just what makes you. But it's never okay to, disrespect, cut, or belittle, talk back to other members of the care team. That includes residents, interns, especially in front of an attending. Again, we're all learners. We're on constantly being, evaluated and graded. And it's never a good look for a medical student to say to the resident, you're wrong. This is what I think, should be done. That's fine if that's how you feel, but I would take it with the resident and discuss it together. and it's just not a good look. And then the other thing is being teachable. I think is really important. I've seen some interactions where clearly the student is brilliant, but one of my senior residents was like, "Oh, do you want to go over this EKG?" And they're like, "No, thank you. I know it." It was just like a huge turnoff. Play along. If anything, it feel good about themselves, which is a good and kind thing for you to do as a student.
All right. So a couple of things, and some things have already been repeated, but I think it's just really important, like timeliness. Timeliness is going to be super important. I know we've talked about that. If you're running late, if your car's not starting, text somebody, find out who to call, find out who to text. And then other things like if you've been given an assignment or a reading, make sure you do it. Like a lot of times you'll reading list ahead of time. Most of the big rotations will send you that. Be prepared, because I promise you they will ask, "Hey, did you see this chapter in this, on this article?" Like if you have a patient, make sure you're doing that reading. And then also the other thing that I see a lot is even recently, like you're not asking questions. Like if you don't think the rotation's going the way that you were told it would go, ask why, ask what's going on. If something's not working right, like let's say you're sent in to see a patient, but you're not given it any instructions on, what exactly are we supposed to be asking and talking about, go back and ask. Don't be afraid. Be your best advocate, because I promise you, if you're not, it's sometimes people get so busy, physicians, residents, they can't circle back around and they can't read your mind. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay, thank you.
When is the best time to ask for a letter of recommendation, and how should you go about asking?
I can start. So maybe not on day one. I would give it some buffer just to see the vibes, and are you jiving with the team? Is the team jiving back with you? And then maybe after 1 or 2 weeks, make it known that, hey, I would love to get a letter of recommendation if you think that this rotation is going well and whatnot, and I would like to, going back to the feedback point, I would like to do a mid-rotation feedback and kind of take a step back and see how I'm doing and how can I be better, and just get a feeling for what whether or not they're interested in writing a letter or not. Because if not, then maybe you pivot to another person, or if they're not a nice person, maybe you should not ask for a letter. But everybody knows and expects and has been through this process of writing letters of recommendation. If you're part of a large team, chances are the resident you're working with immediately is going to write the letter, and the attending is going to put their name on it. Perfectly fine. Unfortunately, sometimes they would ask you to draft a preliminary letter. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. But everybody knows that as someone rotating on the service, they might ask for a letter of recommendation. They will be looking at you a little bit more closely. They want to develop a relationship with you. They want to see you as human, so that they put stuff on the paper other than the CV.
I agree with all of that. I think one important thing to keep in mind is, even if you don't know exactly what specialty you want to go into, it doesn't hurt to ask from different rotations. Even going into surgery, I had a EM letter of rec because that's initially what I was interested in. So I think even if that may not be something you have on your radar, always act like it is because you never know. That maybe you, after the fact, you go, wow, I think back on that internal med rotation, I absolutely loved it. And how great would it be that you already did really well and you already asked for that letter of rec? So just kind of, I think just having that in the back of your mind as you work your way through all your clinical rotations is super helpful.
I think so if you do like a 1-month sub-I, you'll work with probably like 4 different physicians. And once you discover who you, like Mustafa said, jive with, and it's kind of your person and you're more comfortable with that person, you can ask them. Another option is when you talk to your attendings, you can ask them about the process itself. And sometimes they'll offer, like, they'll be like, oh, yeah, you'll need letters, and this is what I did. And oh, I'm happy to write you one. So sometimes you can get it that way, kind of reverse, by being like, can I ask you some advice on how to navigate this next chapter? I've done that before. I've never had to draft my own, but I do agree with Michael that I did have a couple of different specialties that I uploaded because it is nice to show diversity. I don't think they expect every single letter from the specialty that you're interested in.
Awesome. I want to follow up on what Dr. Logan said. If you're offered a letter of recommendation, don't turn it down. Take it. You will be, so you can say what letters go to what program in ARIS, right? But if someone offers you a letter of recommendation, absolutely yes. Have your CV and your personal statement ready to send them. Your career advisement department will generally give you a template that you can email people and ask for letters of recommendation. I think that if you're interested in a specialty that and you're on that rotation, of course, if it's a sub-hour edition, they know you're interested. They may be expecting to ask for a letter of recommendation, but you know, if you'd let them know you're interested, most physicians are wanting to help you get to where you need to go, right? They know how hard it was. If someone offers you the letter, take it. Whether you're like whether you feel like you have a connection with them or not, they feel strongly about you. And then maybe after your feedback session. So at the end of your rotation, they don't always, they should talk to you about the good, the bad on your rotation. If you're getting some positive feedback, then that's the best time at the end to go, hey, I appreciate all of this. You've had a good back and forth conversation. Then you're like, hey, would you mind writing me a letter of recommendation? And if that's a yes, then you send them those things that they're going to need, your personal statement and your CV.
And one final thought: if God forbid, you're at the time of submitting your application and you don't have the right amount of letters, you can always touch base with your school. It's a medical school; they have physicians, and chances are there's going to be someone who can write you a letter and who know you. They spend at least 2 years, 3 years with you. And then if you're applying for a specialty program, so programs that require a preliminary medicine or surgery, you certainly want to have more than, say, radiology letters. You want to have internal medicine. You want to have, if you did well on surgery, get surgery, OB, whatever it is. But it shows that you're well-rounded, not just radiology or radiation oncology.
Now we will be moving into our breakout rooms. You will be randomly assigned to a breakout room, but feel free to switch to a different room if you'd like to. You'll be able to ask the panelists questions directly. Please use the hand raise feature if you have a question and unmute your microphone. And then the breakout sessions will end at 7:58 and you'll automatically be brought back to the main room for closing remarks.
Few words about research. We got cut off. Someone asked a question about research. As a student, the easiest thing you could do is write a case report. If you see an interesting case, talk about it with a resident, put it together. It's an easy publication that way. Other things you can get, paired up with a resident either at the rotation that you're doing or at other programs that you're interested in and work on a review article, retrospective review, or some other projects that they're working on and they would like help. Sorry, I just wanted to finish my thought there to the person who asked. And we're happy to guide you if you have any other questions. Feel free to reach.
So thank you to our panelists for the great advice and to all of you who joined us. A recording of this webinar will be posted on the AOGME webinar series webpage within 7 days. The link to the webpage is posted in the chat. Visit the webpage to register for our upcoming webinars and to view recordings of previous webinars. If you have questions, please email us at aogme@thedoubleacom.org. Thank you again for joining us tonight and have a great evening.